Okay, today we're doing the kindergarten, the Program K project, which is a handprint. It's based on African sculpture. We do it a little bit differently at EDS than we do, than they explain it in the book, because we use glazes on ours. So we'll be using the same clay, which is a white low fire clay. And if you watch the first video about the basics, you know how to cut these into slabs really easily. And I ask you to kind of pat on each one and just kind of push the clay together a little bit. You're not thinning it out or making it wider. You're just kind of pushing the clay back together. So when you're working with slabs, you want to make sure that you pick them up off the mat often. If you don't do that, and you just are pressing and pressing and pressing, then they get stuck to the mat and you have to scrape them off, which isn't pretty. So here you're going to have a nice rectangle. And they're very easy to cut into circles, and they don't have to be perfect. So I'm not even going to use a template. I'm just going to cut this into a circle. K1's hands are generally pretty small, so you don't have to worry about that. And that's scrap clay that you could probably send home with the kids as a treat. Just put it in a plastic bag, tie it up, and each kid can take home their scraps. So now you have a nice round. And I wouldn't worry too much about the edges. So you basically want to get their handprint in there first and foremost. So on top of the clay supply shelf, I have a whole bunch of pieces of foam, and you can see they say for clay use only. And this is the project that we use them for. So this is a little bit bigger than my hand, so I'm just going to pretend. But if you have a parent, and you have, I think I have 4 pieces of foam, so you could have 4 volunteers helping to take each kid and press their hand down. And sometimes this foam works, and sometimes you just want to, it depends on how soft the clay is. It seems like this clay is pretty soft. So I'm just going to push part of my hand down in here, and you can see that you get a nice handprint in there. So you'll get the kid's whole hand in there. And then you can ask them to go, and I can't see where my pinky was, so I'm going to press a little bit harder. So then they can go back to their seats, and they could maybe take a craft pick and go around their handprint. I'm going to pretend that my thumb got in here, and I'm going to add that in like that. So here's my handprint. And now if I want to, I could use a tool. I pointed out in the first video that all the tools have different shapes, and you can find and use any kind of a tool you want to. I like this rounded one, so I could take this and make a border all the way around and kind of squish the clay out a little bit. Or I could take my craft pick and draw, like in here there's a heart. I could draw a heart here. I could draw flowers out here if I wanted to. You can see you can do pretty much anything you want to do. I could make my fingers striped. I could add as much texture as I want to this. So I'm going to make striped fingers. Maybe another flower out here. And then just to make it pretty, I'm going to keep going all the way around with my border. Okay. So that's all they're going to do. Some of the kids this is going to take them, 10 minutes, and they're going to be done. The last thing we want to make sure we have before we put our name on here is you want to have a nice hole through it. You can see it better in this one. You want to have a nice big hole in here so that we can put a piece of leather lace and it'll be a hanging plaque. So the way you do that is you can grab a tool that's round, or you can just grab a pencil, because there's lots of them in here. And I like to ask the parents to do this and not the kids. It should be at least 1 finger width away from the edge to make it nice and sturdy. And I open 2 of my fingers and put them in between my fingers. And then I go all the way through. And I make a bigger hole than I feel like I want, because clay shrinks. And then on the back, I'm just going to open that up. And I'm not too concerned about that clay. If you're really worried about it, you can pull it off. But I think if you just smooth it out, you got a nice big hole there for hanging. Then the last thing you want to do, and again, I ask the parents to do this, is write the children's initials and their room number. As parent volunteers, you need to know their initials. You need to be able to read their initials so you know whose is whose. And as the art coordinator, I need to have the room number in case it gets mixed up with other classes. I can be sure to get it into the right class cabinet. So at this stage, you're done building this project. You would take all of the projects and lay them out in a single layer on the clay drying shelves, which are above where you found the clay. Make sure you put your teacher's name, sign on the shelf so I know whose classroom it is. Then you would leave those there to dry, and when they're dry, I will take them and put them in the kiln. So I ask that you give me at least 2 weeks to do that. So you will do another project after you do the wet clay. You will do a whole other 2-week project in between. And then you will find that I have fired these projects in the kiln, and they will come out looking like this. This is called bisque, and I will put these bisqued pieces in your class cabinet. So the next time you come in to glaze, you will find them in your cabinet. So the next thing you want to do is watch the clay glazing demonstration video where I go through glazing for all of the projects, because it's basically the same for all of them, so we can get it done in one video.